Thank you all for tuning in here with me today as I share with you what very well may be my new favorite Cambrian invertebrate. Opabinia will always have my heart for getting me into this mess, but Aysheaia is just so special. To set the scene, it's 1978. Harry Whittington has recently concluded that Noroia is a trilobite, which pleases him greatly, but the fact remains that all of his non-trilobite subjects have failed to fit into modern taxonomic groups. He has accepted the idea that attempting to place Cambrian animals into extant groups is fruitless. Then he starts to investigate Aysheaia pedunculatus. The name Aysheaia refers to Ayshea's Peak in Yoho National Park, named in 1904 but later changed to Ayshea's Peak. Pedunculatus is a form of the Latin word pedunculus, which means foot. Aysheaia fossils sort of resemble Hallucigenia without the iconic spines that define her. Aysheaia is also twice as long, with a maximum size of 6 centimeters. She is worm-shaped, but with 10 pairs of walking limbs and 1 pair of perpendicular appendages closest to her head. Her exterior is not mineralized, but she likely had a rough, porous cuticle made of chitin. Her mouth is in the center of the anterior end, though the body is not separated into distinct sections. Instead, it is annulated throughout, similar to a polychaete. Because of this segmentation, Walcott originally classified Aysheaia as a polychaete in the phylum Annelida, but this was quickly resolved as Aysheaia bears a striking resemblance to another iconic invertebrate, the velvet worm. Velvet worms make up the phylum Onychophora, which lies just outside the arthropod clade in phylogenetic terms. In 1930, George Evelyn Hutchinson published a paper about Aysheaia, claiming her right to the Onychophoran label. He revisited this conclusion with additional evidence in 1969 to further explore her morphology. 9 years later, when Whittington got his hands on her, he took Hutchinson's findings into account, but was much more focused on her ecology. Aside from her appearance, something else makes Aysheaia fossils unique: the presence of sponges. Out of 19 Aysheaia fossils obtained by 1978, 6 of them also featured sponges. You know, sea sponges, phylum Porifera, hypothesized to be the very first animal to have ever existed, aside from maybe ctenophores. Whittington deduced that Aysheaia may have used sponges as habitat and food source, as each foot has spines and a curved claw at the end, perfect for climbing and anchoring. The 2 appendages near the mouth had spines as well, which could have been used to tear the sponge tissue to allow for easier feeding. These conclusions paint a fascinating picture of a highly specialized organism, which is more than we can say for any of the other Burgess creatures we've looked at so far. While we have been able to discuss the ecology of our other subjects, a specific relationship to another taxa, and anatomical evidence of adaptations is huge. As unique and interesting as Aysheaia is, she's no mystery, but Whittington was used to mysteries. He no longer expected any Cambrian animal to fit into a modern group. So, when he published on her at the end of the year, he claimed similarities to Onychophora, not membership. Stephen Jay Gould emphasized the fact that Whittington came to this conclusion using the same exact information that Hutchinson had, so the only difference was Whittington's psychology around the subject. But I do not blame Whittington, as every single time someone came to a grand conclusion about one of these creatures, it was later debunked. Today, people who know of Aysheaia immediately associate her with velvet worms. The effect even exists in reverse, as people have begun to call velvet worms living fossils. I personally think that this just creates misunderstandings. Even if Aysheaia is an onychophoran, lots of changes have occurred in the past 500 million years. Aysheaia seems to lack jaw structure, while the presence of jaws in velvet worms is of significance. The other major difference is that Aysheia's posterior ends right at the final pair of legs, while velvet worms have a bit of a butt sticking out. Aysheaia is also missing the iconic annulated antennae of velvet worms, and she consistently has 10 pairs of legs, while velvet worms have between 13 and 43, depending on the species. It is also important to consider what may have prompted the Onychophora to evolve onto land and abandon their sponge-dependent lifestyle. They disappear from the fossil record after the Cambrian, so we have no clues beyond speculation and inferences. In 1985, Richard Robeson published a more extensive review of the differences between Aysheaia and velvet worms and came to the conclusion that the transition to a terrestrial lifestyle explains the morphological changes. Robeson agrees that Aysheaia belongs in the Onychophora. This opinion has persisted, with more conservative approaches claiming Aysheaia as a lobopodian closely related to the Onychophora, while others still assume that she belongs in the group. As a general rule when making phylogenies, we do not make any claims that an animal is the direct ancestor of another animal, though with Aysheaia we may as well have, because people talk about her that way regardless. When I look at Aysheaia, I see velvet worms, but I also see tardigrades. I mean, look at the mouth. That is a tardigrade mouth, right in the front. They also have stubby legs with hook-shaped claws at the ends, just like Aysheaia. Tardigrades may only have 4 pairs of legs and are way smaller, but the similarities are too significant to overlook, especially when considering lifestyle and how it can change over time. Whittington even mentioned tardigrades in his 1978 paper, as have many other scientists in Aysheaia-related literature, but no solid conclusions have been made regarding their relationship. Still, their presence persists in the literature. Aysheaia is a lesson in caution when evaluating phylogenetic relationships. The way we discuss evolution can turn the general public's understanding of it into a game of telephone. Many of the terms we use, like fossil and ancestor, are generally misunderstood, and when those of us who do understand them use them too liberally, those without a formal science education will take that information at face value. Velvet worms are not living fossils, and we cannot say with any certainty that Aysheaia is their direct ancestor. Perhaps Whittington was right to not make any direct claims about Aysheaia. After all, we can only speculate. His preference for taxonomic uniqueness, as Gould put it, saves us all the trouble of unlearning misinformation. Thank you all for watching, and a huge thanks to Aysheaia for being so special. If any of you have a favorite Cambrian creature, I would love to hear about it in the comments. We have plenty more to explore as we continue reading through Wonderful Life, so stay tuned. Bye!